it's first time me doing a webinar, and I come from a different generation that this is a Zoom webinar, and this is what Zoom used to look like during my generation. You just got like a magnifying glass and you zoomed. You see? Yep, that's how this thing's going to go. So just strap in. This is the rest of the webinar will be exactly like this. I know some of you out there watching know me better than others, so maybe I should just cover my background a little bit. I'm a Sovereign Ipsissimus in the Lineage of King Salomon in the Modern Mystery School. So some might say, what is a Sovereign Ipsissimus? It means that I know the least, but I ask the most. That's really what it comes down to. It means a Sovereign Ipsissimus is someone who comes to understand the totality of the limitations of a human being, and most especially the self, and where we need to expand and grow, and to empty our cup as much as possible, opening up potentials by hopefully reducing the amount of assumption and opinions about the world and others and God in general. So that's where I am in the lineage. My primary job is to make sure that the teachings of the lineage are kept as pure as possible so that they don't become corrupted or polluted by sort of floating opinions that change with the times, that kind of thing. So that's where I fit into the grand scheme of things. And in this, part of what we do is we teach esoterics, hermetics, different forms of magics, Kabbalah, sacred geometries, all sorts of stuff that would be relevant to someone who's seeking a path of higher spiritual understanding. Myself, I was, it's kind of interesting because the guy that founded us is a guy named Gunny Gunnison, and we call him Founder just because we want to sound as weird as possible. So we call him Founder. But he's the guy that founded this part of the lineage. And his story is a little different because he was sort of born into destiny, where someone like myself was not. I am a product of the lineage. I'm someone who came in who is just about as normal as anyone else could be, whatever that might be. And it was through the teachings and the path and the understandings, which are not always easy, that I was able to get where I am in life. And I owe a great deal of thanks and gratitude for what this lineage has given me, and most especially for what my teacher, Founder Goodney, gave to me. And a great deal of what I want to do to serve people is to pass on the things that worked for myself and that I know work for thousands of people around the world to others. And that's really why I do what I do. My story is I came from a business background and owning my own businesses and working in the corporate world, and was just dissatisfied with who I'd become. Success, yes. Financially successful, yes. Business success. If you were doing the checkbox of life, was I successful? Yes, on the checkboxes, but yet not really satisfied inside, knowing something was missing. And that eventually led me to search out many things. One of them led me to the Modern Mystery School. And through a great many resistances, I found myself actually quite enjoying the teachings that I was getting and giving me much greater perspective and understanding and connection to what change looks like. So that's pretty much how I got here. Of course, the story's a little longer than that, but that's the highlight reel. But now I'm teaching this class called, what's it called again? Keys of the Ancients, or Hermetic Crossing into Lineage of King Salomon. That's a cool name. I like that name. I think I created that name. That's why I like it. So it's really good. This class is a little different than anything we've done in the past, possibly anything that's ever been done in the lineage. The class is being offered to the public. Now, my role in the mystery school is that generally I'm the teacher of teachers. So I teach other people how to teach what we do, how to do what we do, how to master what we do, and then how to pass on that mastery to others. So I generally don't teach to the public anymore. I did a long time ago, but I've generally moved into a different role. And I feel that the time has come where it's time to go and talk directly to the public again in a little bit of a different way, with a little bit of a different methodology. And that's really where this class comes from. Before we get into some of the contents of the class, people might ask, why would I want to come to this class? Like, what's so inspiring, interesting? What would drive me towards it? One of the things you learn in our lineage and in Hermetics is that I can't answer your why for you. I don't know why. You have to know why. It's not for me to know why you do things. It's for you to know why you do things. But I can tell you that, what are some of the general whys that I have heard over the years of why someone would want to study in the mystery school or Hermetics. It's interesting because it goes from the most surface answer to, I'm bored and I've got money and time. I know that sounds weird to a lot of people, but some people do. And I just want to learn some new things. I want to go try something. And that's really surface, very shallow. But hey, that might be someone's why. Another person can say, much like myself, I'm kind of tired of where I am in my life and I don't really know how to get out of this box. And the worst kind of prison that we get into is a prison of our own making. We're the warden of that prison, and we tend, through our beliefs and our understandings of what we think we know and what we know, that we end up sort of stuck sometimes. And one of the worst kind of stucks is that you're not failing, but you're also not succeeding. And that's just a really tough place to be. When you're failing, you kind of can throw everything that you got inside of you at something. If you desire it, you can throw everything you got it to change it. But when you're kind of stuck in that medium ground, that mediocre place where it's just, I'm not really doing well, but I'm not really doing bad. It's that kind of like, I'm right down the middle, that, well, again, mediocre place. That's for some people that might say, I need to break out of this box and I need to start looking at life in a different way. I need different understandings. That might be a reason why someone would take the class. It might be to start to understand what joy is. So there is so much misunderstanding of what joy is, especially in spiritual practices. Joy is disconnecting. Joy is letting go. Joy is never having to have any sort of struggle. Joy is never suffering. Joy is knowing all there is. Maybe joy is those things, but maybe joy is more than that too. Maybe there's a lot more to joy, and that's why so many people struggle with realizing, who they are and what they're trying to seek. So for us, when we're talking about Hermetics, we don't want to look at knowing a truth. A truth can be deceptive, because you'll hear in New Age teachings, your perspective is what creates reality. Your perspective is what creates truth. But we know that gravity doesn't care about your perspective, and gravity doesn't care whether you agree with it or not. Gravity works, and for everyone the same. You step off a cliff, you'll fall without some external device to help you. So, there are things that are rooted in reality that don't change based on your opinion, don't change based on your perspective, that, it is what it is, it is so. And so when we look at things like that, we say, is it, especially with other people, is it truth we're looking for? Hermetically, that can lead you to a very negative place. What we're looking for is understanding. I don't want to know the truth of someone. I want to understand why they do what they do and who they are. And I want to understand why the universe is the way it is. And I want to understand why these forces that affect me, why life affects me this way, why I react this way, why you react this way. I want to understand. And in understanding, there is less judgment and more ability to navigate, to redirect the self, to help others, to provide that assistance to other people, to have peace of mind, because you'll never have peace of mind without understanding. And those that seek only truth, they tend to become academically stuck in a wrong and a right, a plus and a minus, and they lack understanding, because sometimes people do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and sometimes people do the wrong thing for the right reasons. And it's all about understanding why someone did what they did, and then hopefully being able to help yourself and others to move past that understanding. So that's a big part of, and there's more to it than that, of course. That's a big part of Hermetics, is realizing that we're not looking for sort of a simple answer, like a simple answer in life that is true and yet lacks the attraction for most people to move forward. Would be, all you need is love. Yeah, that's accurate. But how do you do that? Or live in the now. Okay. Let me know when you're doing that and how that changes you. Now, these things are not incorrect, but in that state, in that sort of abstract state of saying things like that, people will put quotes on Facebook and you just sort of shrug and you go, that doesn't help anyone because they can't use it. If I tell you to live in the now, please begin living in the now immediately. Take that place. It just doesn't work like that. Hermetics takes us into a much deeper way of seeing things and a greater understanding. It allows us to understand what forces are affecting us and the why of those forces. So Hermetics is something that is probably, we say probably because who knows 100%, probably the oldest teachings and understandings that there is about what some might call God on the planet. They are much, much older than any religion on earth today, including the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They're much older than the Eastern religions. Now, we say probably because who knows? Who knows? Hermetics, most people would assume Hermetics comes from Hermes Trismegistus. That's actually sort of true and sort of not. He was perhaps the most renowned teacher of Hermetics, but he didn't create Hermetics. Hermetics is not something anyone created. It's universal laws that have existed since the beginning of all creation. Now, and we could make Hermetics simple. If someone say, well, how would you define Hermetics? We could say a really simplistic version would be to understand the mind of God without the pollution of human, without someone trying to put an opinion on it. And so there are certain things that work a certain way that is set up for the human condition, that regardless of who you are, regardless of how you identify, regardless of your race, color, creed, sexual preference, regardless of your religious beliefs, it just doesn't matter. These things supersede all that. And it is the way it is for all humans. These things are what affects all humans. And that's the root of Hermetics. Now, Hermes, he kind of codified that and sort of developed the understandings, and he shaped it so that it could be passed down in a much more easy way, that there was understandings and teachings that could go with it, as opposed to sort of this nebulous sort of philosophical way of seeing things. But the actual core of Hermetics, it's kind of like identifying gravity exists. It's not that someone created gravity, it's that Hermes was able to explain why gravity does what it does. That's kind of the way Hermetics is. Its roots go back. So we say Hermetics is at least 8,000 years old. Why would we say that? Well, its roots go back to pre-dynastic Egypt and Greece. So this goes before there was pharaohs, in other words, before there was any of those, before there was a Cleopatra and a Tutankhamun or Ramses or any of that. It's before there was any of the dynasties. And we know in writings that Hermetics was referred to 3,000 to 4,000 years ago in writings that refer to thousands of years prior to that. Now, the reason we don't know if it's older than 8,000 years is because no one was writing anything down back then for us to refer to in Hermetics, but we have writings that are thousands of years old that refer to times that were thousands of years before that in the roots of Hermetics. And it may be, from the traditions that we understand, it may have come even and had influence from Sumeria, of course. So we know Hermetics is thousands of years old, most likely at least 8,000, but we could sort of argue that back and forth to see how far back it goes. These teachings are grounded in wisdom. Most of the wisdom that you receive in the world, when it comes to sort of a spiritual alignment of understanding of the self and understanding of the nature of the universe, those would come from Hermetics. And some of them have been picked up by New Age traditions. Living in the Now is a Hermetic teaching that's been around for thousands of years. And when people say it, you kind of go like, okay, you're quoting a Hermetic understanding that's thousands of years old. It is what it is. It is so, that is Hermetic. As above, so below, that's Hermetic. As within, so without, that's Hermetic. What you would sometimes refer to as the Star of David, or the six-pointed star, or one of Solomon's stars, has many different names. That comes from Hermetics. Sacred geometry comes from Hermetics. The roots of all these things come from Hermetic understanding. And they were sort of refined, clarified, and greater understanding was brought over many, many millennia. Now in our traditions, our roots are Hermetic, but we're also very esoteric, because esotericism comes from an understanding of Hermetics. And so they're kind of the brother-sister act of greater spiritual development. And then within the understanding of Hermetics, we would bring in Kabbalah, Thurgia. You would bring in sacred geometries and ritual magic and many other great understandings that tie into a greater Hermetic understanding and a greater understanding of the self. So what, one might ask, so what's the point of Hermetics? The ultimate point is to know thyself. And to know thyself has, because Hermetics has been around for thousands of years, has also been around for thousands of years. It is the core of why you exist. To thy own self be true is a part of that. And without seeking to know thyself, you are basically living a life of what one might call distraction. It's why so many of the great teachers over the years have said there is nothing else more important than to know thyself. There is nothing, the Oracle at Delphi, know thyself, is written over that. There's nothing more important than knowing thyself. For that is the key to God, for that is the key to your joy, for that is the key to the greater understanding of all there is. And when one knows thyself intimately, one knows everyone else in the world. One knows everything else there is to know, including that you'll never know all there is to know, which I know it's kind of a funny way of saying it, but it's true. Because as you know more through knowing thyself, you realize you know less and that there is more questions to be asked. Many things that you would not explore on your own. So again, we might examine, say, another New Age thing. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If you're meant to know something, you're meant to know something. If you're meant to achieve something, you'll achieve it. And hermetically, that is, there are words I want to use. I'm going to be real polite here. I would just say they're bunk. Most of what is meant to be worked for. And the thing you consider the most valuable in your life is the thing that you've worked the hardest for. The thing that has meant the most to you is the thing you work hardest for. And to know thyself does not come easily. And it is interesting when some people might say, usually New Age people, they would turn around and say, for example, why do I need to study anything, Hermetic spirituality? Shouldn't I just, meditate and I'm one with God and therefore, and you go, yeah, you can do that. Yes. But that's the only thing anyone ever believes they can do within their own power with no external assistance. For example, if you would not wake up and say, I decided I want to be a rocket engineer, therefore I'll meditate on being a rocket engineer, and then I'll know everything about rocket engineering, and then I'll go do that. You wouldn't decide that you could be a chef through meditation only. You wouldn't decide you could be a mechanic through meditation, a mathematician. You would become a language expert. Everything else in life, someone would say, you have to study, you have to learn, you need to talk to other people, you need to be questions, your understandings need to be expanded upon. But in New Age belief, you're supposed to just know everything without effort. And that is, for those of you seeking a path of just knowing without effort, the mystery school is not the right place to be. You're going to have to work. And one of the ways that we teach, and one of the cores of our lineage, is that you're going to have your beliefs challenged. So I've had people say to me, how can I learn if you're sort of challenging? Don't I need more sort of, I would say they were looking for affirmation of their understanding. And the answer is no. You need to know why you believe something for yourself, and you need to understand if it's accurate or not. And there is no way you can say an integrity of yourself, to yourself, by yourself. I absolutely know this is true because I've examined it extensively. Until you've examined it extensively. And that almost always requires knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and forces that could influence you that you were either not aware of that were influencing you, or that you have never considered. And so your beliefs, when you bring them to the table, must be examined. And so we would challenge every belief that you have. That doesn't mean we agree or even disagree with your belief. In fact, very little of that matters to me as a teacher. What matters is if you believe it and why. I would even say, for example, that you could take something like racism. Whoa, did that guy say racism? Yes, it did. That's a terrible thing. Okay, why? Explain it to me. And I need you to tell me why it's bad, and I need you to give me all your understandings, but they have to come from you, not someone else. They can't be someone else's opinion that you're regurgitating, because you need to understand yourself. And if you understand yourself, then your motivations come from the clarity of why you understand something to be so and why you understand it is not so. Not just the so, but the not so. And I'm sorry for getting a little bit crazy with the Hermetics, but this is a webinar in Hermetics. This is how we talk about teaching. It's not just this. We're not trying to teach you a reality. This is reality. And so many people want to teach you a reality. I want you to understand your reality. You need to understand what's real for you. And that's not just your opinions. It's not just your beliefs. It's so much more. And when you understand your reality, you begin to understand everything else. If you're truly understanding who you are, then the secrets of the universe become unlocked from within you. But I don't know anyone, including Jesus Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, or anyone else, who was able to do this on their own. All of them needed to do a lot of self-examination, and that self-examination cannot strictly be done on your own by yourself. It must be done in a way that causes you deeper reflection. And unfortunately, all of us, every single one of us as humans, we're limited to what we understand something to be. And so we get stuck in that limited understanding. And especially, this is one of the really tricky ones that happens to people. You start with a presumption that you assume is true. And then every presumption or assumption after that is based on an incorrect thing. And you spend 20 years going a certain direction. And I've seen lots of people do that, me being one. When you arrive at the end of your inaccurate conclusions and you go, why did this not work out? So the first step was going the wrong direction. You wanted to go north and you thought you knew where north was, and your first step was to the south. And you continued on that journey for 1,000 more steps going the wrong way. So how does one sort of navigate that? You got to get down into what the first step was and where it came from. And by the way, you might find you were right. There's nothing, I mean, sure, you might find that what you did was absolutely accurate. And if you're living life, all your relationships are good, you've got joy, you feel you have a life of abundance and time, good health, you're able to focus, achieve what you want. Life is a person who lives a strong Hermetic life, who's an initiate. Their life should not be about what they're trying to run away from and the fears that they have. They should be waking up and saying, what do I want to create today? These are my options. This is what I have on the table. It's if you're living that way, then all I would say to you is hit the gas and go, baby, go. Go that direction as fast as you can. And do me one favor, if you could, please. Do me a favor for humanity. Share it. Because light unshared dies. Joy unshared dies. And if you have joy and you've found out what that joy is, then it could be anything. It could be cooking. It could be, I don't know, a Netflix show that you love. Whatever it is. Whatever brings you true joy. Not happiness. That's a different thing that comes from the ego. But joy, that's what the world needs. The world needs more joy. So I would say to you, the things you find joy in, please share those joys. Whatever that is for you. It could be anything from knitting to fixing up 1950 muscle cars. Whatever floats your boat and whatever truly brings you peace, understanding, and you feel is a great expression for life, please share it. The world needs to hear more about what we love, not what we hate. And unfortunately, in the world today, too much of the broadcasting of society is about what you don't like. And it's like, okay, can we stop that for a little while? Because I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about what we don't like. But from a perspective of being a sovereign Ipsissimus and being a teacher, I would say to you, give me your 10 gratitudes before me give me your one complaint. Tell me the 10 things you appreciate before you tell me anything you dislike about life. Tell me the 10 things you appreciate. And every human being can find at least 10 things. So a good ratio, 10 positives before you get to tell me about one negative. Tell me 10 things that you're grateful for. It could be anything as simple as, I opened my eyes today, I'm functional, and therefore I have an option to do something. That's one gratitude. I'm alive is a gratitude. Another one could be, every morning I get that cup of tea, cup of coffee. I love the smell of that. It, brings me some sort of stimulation, some joy. That could be a second gratitude. It could be anything. But it's your personal gratitudes before you tell me about all the things you don't like. Because a person who doesn't have gratitude will never have enough. They'll walk around in life saying, I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have gratitude. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. And they're always looking at the thing that's missing. And what they don't realize is that it's through the things that you have that you count in your blessings, in your gratitudes. that you realize the answer to the thing you're missing is in those things. Those gratitudes are the tools that you can then build the thing you're missing and find it. But if you don't count your gratitude, you're not taking toll of the good things in life that you have available to you to use. So that's, it's a major thing that's a minor thing all at the same time. Because once you start living in gratitude, all of life becomes a lot more about what you can do with it, as opposed to trying to fight off the wolf at the front door. It's more about what you can build. So yeah, that's what we're doing. That's where we are. Okay. I have notes. People probably can do this on computers. I'm not that guy. I have notes to look at. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Hermetics just for 1 second. There are 7 great Hermetic principles, which you can look up online and read about them. I'm not going to say what you're reading is accurate. Maybe you are. But those are just the 7 great Hermetic principles. And there are several thousand lesser principles that affect you in life. One of them would be, for example, you cannot share what you do not have. That's one of them. And so that, we would say hermetically, one must have discernment. So discernment is understanding right from wrong, up from down, left from right, truth from falsehood, what works, what doesn't, what serves me, what doesn't. It's able to discern what is so and what is not so, all those things, and more than that. But if one were to truly understand discernment, they would be looking at things that would effectively help them to understand what will get them where they want to go and what won't. And so it's not about that there's a fixed wrong and right. There can be a wrong and right, but that is rarely fixed, because what's wrong and right, depending on the situation, can be variable for a person. And let me give you one example. What's right for one person might be very wrong for the person beside you. So hermetically, you don't have this is always right and this is always wrong. The only thing that is truly always right and good is God. And then, of course, we'd have to unpack that, which I'm not going to do for you today. Come to the class, come to any of the classes, we'll talk about that. But that's a big subject matter. So wrong and right has to be understood. But what is wrong and right for you is more about what serves me and what doesn't serve me. If it moves me forward in life, if I grow and progress from an understanding, then that's probably the right thing to do. If it makes my life worse, if it makes me judge other people, if it brings in negativity, a state of mind that is not healthy, then it's probably wrong. But one state of mind might be good for one person, another state of mind might be good for someone else, might not be good. So those things kind of matter. And one of the great Hermetic principles, one of the first ones, the first one, is the principle of mentalism. And it says all is mind, the universe is mind. And what some people, for example, and some of you are on the call, I know, are from the lineage, and let me help you with a certain understanding you may not have gotten. All is God. All is mind. You could translate to say God is mind. God is all the mind. God is mind. And in the mind is all the creativity. So when we say all is mind, it's not just your state of mind, though we could relate that in a certain way to a human being and the way they're thinking. It's more about everything was brought into existence from the mind of God. All is mind. All is God. All is God's mind. And so then we need to understand, okay, if I wanted to understand God better, and for us hermetically, you are God, so you're also understanding yourself better. I need to understand why the mind works this way. Why does God's mind work this way? And so that's why we go back to what I was telling you is the one way of looking at hermetics is understanding the mind of God without the pollution of human, because God is understandable. And when people say, for example, the Lord works in mysterious ways, yeah, maybe, but he's a lot more, or she's a lot more, or they are a lot more, whatever label you want to stick on, more understandable than you think. God is not so abstract and distant and so bizarre that you can't figure out what God is up to. Actually, God can create great clarity and understanding. You can understand God, or at least a lot more than you think you could understand God. I'll put it that way. And God is not, some guy sitting on a throne with a big white beard or something like that. God gets more complicated than that. And we really couldn't get into the whole thing right now in the webinar. It would take too long. But if you wanted to define God, one way you could, in a very simple way, is understand a creature that could create all there is to create and has no fear. So God never operates from being afraid of something. There is no fear. Fear, when we say God fears something, or we assign God having hatred or anger, and that's coming from the mind of human, because a human has fear and God doesn't have that fear built into it. So, and then of course we ascribe a bunch of things from that fear because we're trying to alleviate that fear. If you think about God, try and direct it more to the concept of creativity and expression of that creativity in joy versus I'm afraid that. And you'll find your life gets a lot better if you align with what you want to build and what you want to express versus what you have to do to survive. And I know we all have to do things we need to survive, but if that takes up the majority of our time in life, then we're not going to have a very joyful life. That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah. Cool. How are we doing on time? We're good? Okay, great. So it's different for me. I'm used to interacting with people and having conversations, and this is all strange to me. So forgive me, I'm doing my best. So in the class, if you come to London, you'll be able to experience something we call initiation. And for those of you who know what this is, that's great. You may have, so you've studied some sort of spiritual practices or religions, you might understand or have the concept of initiation. But let me help to define it from the lineage's point of view. We could say initiation is a rite of passage or a spiritual awakening that is about the transformation of the consciousness, so that it marks a new level of understanding, responsibility, and connection to the divine that is within and the divine that is without. So we don't get understanding of the divine, of God, of the nature of the universe without responsibility. Those things do not come together. One needs to commit to that understanding. One needs to commit to the challenge. One needs to commit to the push that has to come so that we can learn. And by the way, move past our ego, because our ego is just a barricade to understanding more. So that does not happen without commitment. And that's why we have to commit to a path. Now, as we are at minimum 8,000-year-old lineage, we have initiations that come from Hermetics that are a part of it. The sixth Hermetic principle is cause and effect, and the initiation is a direct representation of the cause and effect. One must be initiated. That's the action they need to take, the cause, so they can effectively grow. So you can't do that in our lineage without initiation. Now, why? If you're asking why, you need to understand that that's rooted in sort of an arrogance that I don't need it. I have all the answers. I am all the things already. And you're like, good. I'm glad you are. And if you are, then you are the master of the universe. So please go master the universe. The rest of us aren't. Jesus needed initiation. Buddha needed initiation. Muhammad needed initiation. All the pharaohs needed initiation. I could go down the list that they all had to receive initiation. Now, some might believe they don't need it, and that's fine. Just if you don't need it and you don't need the teachings and you don't need the lineage, then just do your thing. No, you're not being held to any account. But for those who are going to walk the path, they will require initiation to do that. We would say that the journey that you want to go on to know thyself, it cannot be obtained through simply your current thoughts and your current patterns that you have right now. There has to be something greater than you. A path is required for someone to grow past their ego. It has to be there. We could use an example of, and some people might not like this example, but it is what it is. We could say the military. One of the things the military does, you come in with your predisposed attitudes about life. And the military says, if you're going to be in the military, this is the way it's going to be. And that pushes a lot of people's buttons. Especially in basic training, you're yelled at, you're told you got to do it this way. I don't like it. And it was up to you. You would sleep later. You would do less exercise. You wouldn't follow your structure the same, but in the military, they make you do that. When you come out the other end, you tend to be a more disciplined person with a better set of tools in your belt because you allowed yourself, you put yourself, hopefully voluntarily, maybe some not, to that process. And Hermetics and the lineage is much like that. You go into a state where you go, okay, I have to change, and I can't change through my own tools strictly. I need additional tools. I need additional help. And to do that, I need to walk a path that has to demand more than your ego is typically willing to give. And same, we go back to the military. You might want to sleep until 9 o'clock, but the military says you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning, whether you like it or not. And you're going to be fed and ready and dressed by 6 and out doing exercise. You go, okay, you wouldn't do that voluntarily because your ego, left to its own devices, just wouldn't step up to the plate. This is the same thing in the lineage. You're required, I mean, it's not the military, you're not having to get up at 5:30 in the morning or something, but you're required to push past your preconceived beliefs so that if they are correct, you can reflect back and look in time that they are so. But most of what happens is you realize they're at least incomplete. They may be completely incorrect, but they're at least incomplete. And you can't get there without walking a path that sort of brings these other things into focus. And to be on that path, one needs to be initiated because initiation ties us in and harmonizes us to the as without and the as within. It brings those two pieces together. So you are stating a commitment to the within and you're stating a commitment to the without, and that's seen in physical action. There is no commitment in the world that does not require physical action. There has to be a physical something that you do if it's a true commitment. Always. It's a physical presence. It's a physical action. It's repeated physical actions that show that one is committed to anything. And of course, we could say words help to a degree. They might, but it's the actions we back up with those words that matter. So without initiation, if you were to try and pursue spirituality, we would say that you end up with superficiality. You end up with a very shallow pursuit because your pursuit will only ever be governed by your ego and what it is you like and don't like. And sometimes what you need is to experience what you don't like. It's going to teach you something. That push, that necessity of examine this more closely. You wouldn't do it on your own, but when you do, you realize, you know what, I had the wrong perspective on this. I misunderstood something. I didn't get where I was. I didn't, Kabbalah helps us to know where we are on the map of the universe. Like, where am I right now? Where am I in my life? Where am I in the universe? Sometimes we don't even know that part. We think we know, and we think that knowing thyself is knowing your ego. I know who I am because I know my ego. And it's like, then you don't know who yourself, because your ego is your shadow. Your ego is that which is cast by the light, and it's the shadow that is cast in the world. And then you identify, or what we might call your personality. You identify your personality as yourself, and you are not your personality. What you are is your individuality. And for those of you who don't understand that, well, you don't have to come to my class, come to any other class and begin that journey, because there is a very distinct difference from your personality to your individuality. And you really, it's to know thyself is to know thy individuality and to actually let go of your personality so that you can become greater than any limitation that you've ever put on yourself prior to this moment in time. So yeah, you need initiations. All the great masters needed it. Initiation marks the alignment of the inner and outer order, the aspiration or desire to grow, and and it's also, when it's done in the physical, it's an acceptance that you have taken on the self-responsibility, and that the lineage has met you in that responsibility and says, we will provide to you as long as you step forward. So again, we have another Hermetic principle. Do not care for someone's situation more than they care for themselves. So we always provide a helping hand to those who are willing to help themselves. And someone who won't do that, you will end up in a relationship that you would interpret as abuse or use or manipulation, whatever label you want to stick on. It'll be negative. When you're in a situation where someone will only take more than they will give, then you're going to have a problem. And so how does one protect themselves? How does one make sure that you are honoring yourself? Is never offer more to a person than they're willing to offer back in their efforts to improve. So if someone's a drug addict or an alcoholic or whatnot, and they say, I want to change, you would have to see more than words. You say, okay, are you willing to go to rehab? If you are, I'll drive you there. Maybe you have resources. I'll pay for it if you'll do that. But you don't, if you say, I'm just going to keep trying to help the person and they have no desire to change, so you care more about their situation than they do, you will end up depleted, you'll end up drained, and you'll end up achieving almost nothing. Now, maybe they need you to lean on them 500 times before that happens. And that's up to you as a person, how far you're willing to go. But what I will tell you is you may never arrive at the place where they change. It's up to you if you want to do that. But in that process, you will drain yourself. So make sure that you have enough abundant energy and time before you embark on a journey to change someone or to provide help to someone who doesn't really desire the help. Generally speaking, it's sort of it's not really going to result in success, but to each their own. But at least you know what's at play. So some of you might say, okay, well, if that makes a bad relationship, what makes a good relationship? Well, there's a lot that makes a good relationship. But to make it really simple, a good relationship always has mutual generosity on the table. I desire to give to you, you desire to give to me. And that doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. Be friends. It can be your direct blood family members. It can be a boss and a coworker. It could be anything. But if the two people desire to give of themselves to the other person, then you're going to end up in at least a good relationship, at least one that does not harm you and does not take from you, but gives to you. And if you're not inspired to give and the other person is, then please don't put yourself in the position of being the one who uses someone. You got to be honest and say, I'm not in the state of being mutually generous. And of course, I'm not talking about moment to moment, because if you're, for example, married, there's always an ebb and a flow. I'm talking about the bigger general scope. Of course, there's a heck of a lot more to it than that. But that just kind of gives you a little bit of hermetics to use. Because the coolest thing about hermetics is it gives you the measuring sticks to know whether something is going to, we talked about discernment, is going to help you or not, where it's going to go. And that wisdom, like I say, hermetics transcends any other belief or opinion you may have. It is the way it is. It is gravity, and gravity doesn't care which God you believe in. This is how I'm going to work. It doesn't matter whether you believe in Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, maybe you're shamanic or you studied some other thing. That's great. You're a Buddhist, you're a Shintoist, whatever. Gravity is what it is. And hermetics is like that. Hermetics is, this is the way it is, whether you believe it or not. It's not relevant. It's not going to change because you disagree with it. Gravity won't suddenly stop working if you disagree with it. It works the way it does. So to get back, yes, you do need initiation for that. And it's ultimately tying together the effort and the purpose of the journey into one thing within the self, so that you can know thyself. And without it, we would say that you can't get there, at least not on a path of hermetics. But again, to each their own. If you can get there without it, you're the first person I know. Go for it. Yeah. Question. I have a question. So theory versus practicality. Where does it become? Well, theory is something that gives you an idea of what you might want to try and do, and practicality is its application. So what I literally just said is extremely practical if you take it out of theory and use it. So if you look at everything I said, if you look at your relationships right now, you can quickly, from what I just told you, assess which relationships are working or not. Am I caring more about a situation than someone else cares? So I've put myself in a state of draining off my energy, my resources, my time, my emotional energy levels, to try and cause a change the other person doesn't desire. The other side is, okay, I'm in a relationship where both people want to give more or less equally in their generosity. They give of themselves and they desire to do it. They don't feel, see, this is the thing. You don't want to get into a state where you feel obligated. I mean, you might, because you feel like, well, I'm supposed to. I'm a good person and I'm supposed to care. So I feel obligated to do that. I get that. That can happen. And you might have certain relationships that are that way, but those relationships will tend to drain you. Even if you feel it's the right thing to do to follow that obligation, it'll still eventually drain you. So I've said this in another video somewhere, but and it's different from culture to culture, but generally in the Western world, generally in, I would say, most of Europe and North America, people say I love you with far less meaning than they should. And we say we love everything, right? We love a milkshake, we love our dog, we love our car, we love our house. And then we say we love our spouse, and I sincerely hope you don't mean equally, because that would be weird. So we use that word love in a very almost arbitrary way. Oh, I love this show as much as you love your family member? Oh, no, not the same. Okay. So we use the word love in a very arbitrary way. What is more hard for most Westerners is to use the words, I like you. I like you actually means more, and it's more of a struggle. And it comes from that obligation we were talking about, that sometimes we feel like we have to be a good person, because we want to be good people. We kind of tell ourselves we have to love you. Well, a good person would love someone, so I have to. And the hardest thing in the world to say to someone is, do I love you? Okay. Do I like you? Well, that's a different matter. Yeah, liking you means that I have a choice. Loving you sometimes feels like you don't have a choice. It's like an obligation. So yeah, like and love are very different things. But all of these things have very pragmatic and practical application. I can assure you, for example, in the class that I'll be teaching and in most of our teachings, there's very pragmatic things that you can walk out of the room and say, I can immediately start applying this. Some of the things I've just said on this video for some of you might be those things where you go, as of this second, I now have a piece of information that allows me greater understanding of my own decisions that I can immediately use as soon as I get off this webinar. In fact, some of you are sitting on this webinar, and the things that I've said to you have caused you to immediately go into contemplation. Yeah, that's how Hermetics works. It rarely leaves us untouched. It leaves us touched by the energy of what it is, leaving us to reassess ourselves, which is awesome. You know, it's a great thing to have. It's a great thing to know that you don't know. It's so valuable to have an empty cup and say, I think I know, but I'm willing not to know. And the people who are going to end up being what you might call the wisest people are the people that walk around knowing less and asking a lot more questions, because they say, I don't know. And they don't assume, and they don't judge you, and they just say, I don't know. I have a question for you. That's in one of my books I wrote, this the recent one I wrote about the difference between wisdom and intelligence. And you can be extremely intelligent and extremely unwise, and you don't have to be a genius to be a wise person. There's a difference. Inside of wisdom comes inherent good. To be wise, one must be good. But to be intelligent, one does not have to be good. They can be basically an evil human being. I hope they're not. But just intelligence does not lead to wisdom. It leads to greater capabilities. But if you are unwise or uncaring, then your intelligence can lead to a great deal of harm of others. And so just because someone's intelligent doesn't mean that they're inherently good, or most especially wise. Some of the most intelligent people I know in the world have been the most unwise people. And some of the people with the least amount of degrees and least amount of evidence in the physical world that they're so smart have been the most wise people, and sometimes, honestly, guys, it's grandma in the kitchen that has the greatest wisdom. And grandma doesn't have a degree doesn't go to Harvard, but she just says the thing, and you go, man, grandma knew. Because wisdom is different. Wisdom, you have to care, and wisdom, you have to have love, and wisdom, you have to be thinking about the human condition and not just plus minus. It's an understanding of the human heart. So the path of Hermetics is a path of wisdom that as you walk it, should you start employing those tools, you become a wiser human being. I'm not going to turn around and tell you you're going to become a more intelligent human being, but you're definitely going to be a lot wiser. Yeah. So Yeah, this is only available in person. All of the great keys in Hermetics, the traditions of Hermetics in the pre-dynastic era of Egypt were always done in oral traditions, and they need to be done in person. The transmission of that understanding is done in person. So online won't work. Just so you guys understand, we are not a new age organization. We do not believe you can hold your hand up to the screen and get a sudden energetic transmission to which you will now be validated in all the great non-committals that you make. This is something that if you're going to commit, and for some of you, you're not going to like it. I'm sorry. I don't apologize for reality. It is what it is. I guess I just apologize for reality. What did I say? It doesn't work that way. You need to be in person, and frankly, in all sincerity, you will get a hell of a lot more out of an in-person conversation, because then you ask your questions and you're able to explore things in a very different way. For example, I'm doing this webinar. These are not teachings. I'm just sharing some concepts with you guys. But there's a barrier between me and all of you. Being able to talk to you and answer your questions more directly, and being able to ask questions back of you so that I can actually define the question that you're asking. Sometimes we don't even know what we're asking. We ask a question, but we haven't defined it clear enough for ourselves. So part of knowing thyself is like, okay, let's explore your question and what it is you actually want to know. And that can only really be done in person. But in terms of online stuff, we do videos. If you want something to touch, there's books. All of that stuff is available. There's many other great teachers. I am but one. We have, in fact, this class in London will be myself overseeing it all, but I have a panel of master teachers from all over the world that are going to be assisting me in teaching. So you're not just going to have one teacher, you're going to have many teachers. Now, you can receive the same core understandings in a 2-day class with a different teacher. I offer a lot more over the 5 days, but by no means would I say those 2 days is anything other than amazing that what we call our guides could offer you. They can offer you the initiation, and there's a number of things that will be taught in the class I'm teaching that you can do with them, and they will take you through that same process, and they're all certified to be able to teach this. I have a little bit other things that I'm teaching, kind of the over and above the regular class. But it's not required to understand the core of the class. The core of the class can be taught in 2 days by any number of teachers all over the world. So that's available to you. And it, if the time and the money and the distance or whatever is too much for you, don't worry about it. You can do it locally, I'm sure, or closer to locally. Let me put it to you that way, because there's 155 other teachers of this in the lineage who would teach the 2-day version, that are all over the Western world and the Middle East and Africa and whatnot. And there's another 300 in Asia. So about 450-ish teachers all over the world who would be able to teach you the same 2-day material if that's the direction you wanted to go. So I guess I should wrap up with a little bit of what we'll be talking about. So the class is 5 days long, and day one, we're going to talk much more in depth about Hermetics. We're going to talk about Hermetics versus religion, because there is a significant difference there. We're going to talk about why we use rituals, why rituals exist in the human condition, like why do they matter? Why do spiritual rituals matter? Where do they come from? What are we working with? We're going to talk about our human potential to be as God. And a lot of other things. And we're going to finish that day with something we call life activation. It's an activation that you need. We'll explain it on that day. For those of you who come or already have it, you can have it done twice, so it's no problem. The second day, we're going to discuss reality and perception versus reality, the concepts of my truth. We're going to talk about dimensions, hierarchy of light. We're going to talk about the pentagram, which is a very powerful symbol, one of the very important sacred geometries that is misunderstood. We're going to talk about the influence of the ego on the true self. And I'm going to have some homework for you guys to do. Who knew? School? Wah! You're back in school. What are you going to do? Day 3 is going to be, we're going to talk about all the energies that affect humanity. We're going to talk about Kabbalah, universal Kabbalah. We're going to talk about the keys to living walking a higher path in life. We're going to talk about a path of progression, how it works. We're going to talk about the transformative power of gratitude and where it fits into life. why you need to live life with an open heart, because I think that's kind of important. And on day 4, we're going to talk about the power of change, 5 foundations of success that everyone should know that is true for all human beings. We're going to talk about spirit guides and where they fit in. We're going to do some ritual work. We're going to do some meditation, and then we're going to do our initiation. And on the last day, that's the day after, so you're initiated on the 4th day, your first class, your first teaching as an initiate will be about joy and the true understanding of joy. And for those of you who have sort of a new age background, I'll just put it to you this way. You've never heard joy expressed this way or taught this way. It's a little bit different. So yeah, I think it's cool, but I'm the teacher. So what do you want me to say? Okay, so I have a few questions that are floating around out there. Let me see. What sparks someone to want to change? That's a great question. That's actually one of the things I'm covering in the class. But to give you a little, change is a lot more complicated than people make it out to be. There's more energy structures that affect change that sometimes we don't understand, including boundaries and understanding the information flow that we deal with from all sorts of sources, lots of stuff. But we generally change when we experience, when the pain of it that we've stayed in the same state becomes too great. Now, that's for most people. Most people change when being in the state they are in becomes an intolerable state, and they have to change. They have to, because it's just painful. However, an initiate should be able to change prior to that state. They should foresee the iceberg coming. Notice that if they go that direction, they're going to run into that iceberg, and then they turn the ship before it hits the iceberg. So an initiate changes because they're able to understand what's coming towards them, not through some psychic prediction, but through understanding the energies. Like, I stand in the middle of the road, there's a car driving straight down the middle of the road at me. This is not a psychic prediction. The result is I'm going to get hit if I stay on the road. So I think I'll step off the road. A lot of people don't change until the pain comes in. We also need to understand, I'll leave you with this because there's more to unpack, but most people believe humans live strictly for the emotional state. That is one of our drivers. One of our drivers is our emotions. We know that. Like, people live for how they feel. That's so true. But there's another piece that nobody ever considers, and it's actually the second major driver of our life, and that is that we live for consequence. We have always lived for consequence. So in fact, we govern our lives. We say we govern our lives from our emotions, but actually we govern our emotions from consequence. Consequence dictates a lot of where we use our emotions. So, and you know that those of you who've been repressed in life because of maybe you had a really strict upbringing, you've been told not to express your emotions, and the punishment of the expression led to you to repress it. So the consequence of the expression was what caused you to react a certain way and to think a certain way. So consequence is one of our greatest teachers. It leads to our greatest experiences. And we need to understand the relationship and change between emotions and consequences. And of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but hopefully that gets you going the right direction. Yes, will this program be available at some point in America? Maybe. I don't know. I could say probably. This is the first time we've ever done this. And to be quite honest with you guys, I have no idea where we go with this next. This is crossing bridges. Sovereign Ipsissimus is generally, our job is to teach other teachers of Hermetics, esoterics, and other things. So we generally don't teach to the public. It's an unusual situation. But I feel like it's time that we can do that. So I don't know if this will be one and done. I don't know if this will be the beginning of many. And that's as close an answer as I can get to you. But if the interest is there, I would put it this way. If the interest is there and it can be accommodated, then I would say, yes, there would be more future teachings in other locations. But it also involves my schedule, the schedule of the master teachers. Like I say, it's a teaching panel. So I don't really know where or when the next one will be, but I'm hoping to do it more, I guess. Oh, where can I find the info about the cost and how to register? Is that where they find it? I don't even know. You go to thedavelanyon.com. That's me. I guess I'm the Dave Lanyon that they're talking about. And you, I guess, register that way. I think that's what they're telling me. They say that's what the answer is. So I assume that's what the answer is. I do know that there's only limited space left. I can't remember how much space is left, but there's just a few. There's not a lot left. I can tell you that. Part of what you might experience if you're a new person to the lineage and you've never taken a class, you're going to be surrounded by other people who've been here a little bit longer because they've shown interest in wanting to be there. This might be a class that in the future we can teach more with other people and not strictly just myself, but I don't know. So right now it's myself and a master teacher team, but the future holds whatever it holds. We'll find out. Cool. So are we good? We're good in the hood? If you have any questions, yell really, really loud and I'll listen for a moment. Nope, I didn't hear any questions. I assume all of them have been answered. I hope you guys found this useful. And I hope to see you, and all of you. I hope to see you in a class in the future, somewhere. There was one question that didn't come up that I'm going to ask for you guys. If you did ask it, I didn't see it, but I'm going to ask it for you guys, and that is, how do you know this is real or true? And the answer is you don't. I do. You don't. Maybe one day you will, but the only way you're going to know if something is real or true is if you do it. And I find the appeal to authority, it lacks discernment. So, for example, when someone says, well, how do you know if something's real? I'm like, how do you know anything's real? Does it have to be written in a book? And do I have to have that book? And if I have the book, do you know if the book is accurate? Did the book say it's right? And if the book is old, does it then therefore make it more accurate? I don't know. Maybe for you it does. For me, it's always been, and for the initiates, when someone says, how do you know it works? The validation is you. The validation is the people in the lineage who've experienced it. They are the ones that will tell you whether it works or not, because they're the ones who have the direct experience. So I wouldn't claim authority in anything that you couldn't examine for yourself. And anyone that does that is, there's words I want to use, and I'm trying to be really nice, but I'm going to say a lunkhead. If you believe that it's only the appeal of authority that makes something work, then you're missing so much about life. Don't appeal to authority. Appeal to thyself. Appeal to thy experience. Know thyself. And Hermetics, when you start to apply them, there isn't a person I know or have ever known, I've taught tens of thousands of people around the world, that it has not benefited them in some way. To a greater or lesser extent, it has created something new in their life that can help them. But those are just my words, and it's just me saying them, and I could be completely wrong, and I could be misleading you. I don't know. You have to decide that. You have to decide that for yourself. And I certainly hope you don't think that you shouldn't assign the authority to anyone who claims to be a thing. My stuff, I look at it this way. Come try it and see what happens, and you'll know better. You'll know how the teachings works by sitting in the moment. But if you're going to try and understand something that can only be understood from the inside by standing on the outside, I don't know what to do for you. You are the gatekeeper of thyself, and so you've locked yourself out of greater understanding. And should you choose to do it, the doors are open. And if you choose not to, well, we love you and we want you to have the best life possible. So I wish you all the good joys in life that you have. And like I said earlier, please, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, whatever, yes, I like you too. Whatever you find joy in, please share it with people. I challenge every one of you, just as a brother, try for 30 days to do two things. One, always talk about what you're grateful for with everyone, including the other person. You should be in relationships with people you're grateful for. So say it to them. That's the first challenge. Number two, only share positive things just for 30 days. Just try it. That doesn't mean your negatives go away. I'm just saying, don't focus on the negatives. Try for 30 days to talk about the things you're grateful for and to be positive. And tell me that doesn't make your life better. And tell me it doesn't change every person around you, because they'll notice you'll immediately shift it. So I'll leave you guys with that. And I hope to see you guys all in the future. And please take care of yourselves. Please love each other. And please most definitely be kind with yourself and show yourself as much respect as you can in the love that you give to the self. Okay, guys. Love you. Bye-bye.